For more than a decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. With Dave Minuk, with Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell, here with you for the next couple hours, talking everything about the Winnipeg Jets, getting you set for this afternoon's tilt against the Edmonton Oilers, getting you set for Monday afternoon's matinee against the Calgary Flames. I have to say to our audience that I think we're going to have to start charging for a behind-the-scenes preview of what goes on with the three of us before the show actually starts, because I think oftentimes the banter that the three of us get into is just as, if not more, entertaining than the actual show we produce. Although one thing I can say for sure, there's a lot more cursing in the pre-show meeting than there is in the actual broadcast that we put forth on this fine YouTube channel. Good to see you both, gentlemen, and I will refrain from calling you by the words that most often are coming through my mind on this Saturday morning.
I'm pretty sure we find ourselves entertaining before the show. I'm not sure how many other people would find us entertaining. Like, I think people that know us might want to, give us a few shekels for that, but I don't know how many other people would find that entertaining. It's basically just a bunch of babas that are just kind of, chirping at each other. That's basically what it is. But yeah, I mean, we always have fun, getting the show started. I think we get, a little bit of our goofiness out, but even though, it seems to always continue throughout the show, but I love it, guys. I mean, I wouldn't do this show if I didn't love you guys. Well, yes. in addition to the millions of dollars I make, that probably contributes to it as well.
That too, of course. The riches, the money fight we have before and after each show is a significant part of it. It's
like you're buying a Cadillac, I'm buying a Cadillac. You should buy a Mercedes. Come on.
Yeah, it's a love-hate relationship. That is, I think, the best way of putting it there, Dave. But nice to see you on this Saturday morning, good sir.
Thank you, Drew. Good to see you as well. And I agree with you. It is rather, humorous, the things that are coming out and we're saying here with the in advance of the show. But we try and save our best for when we're live on air. And who knows?
I don't know if cancel culture applies to YouTube shows, but I think we're probably okay. We're not quite at the cancel culture level of banter back and forth, but in any event, it is definitely an entertaining banter before the show begins.
For those watching, basically 10 minutes before the show, it's just Dave and I telling Drew to talk less for basically the entire time. Like, we just basically tell him to shut up for 10 minutes, and then we start.
Yeah. Well, let's put it this way. Drew needs like one of those like Barnum and Bailey three-ring circus hats so he could and Ezzy and I guess we would be the Tigers.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the lion tamer and you guys are the lions, which always works well.
I thought Chris Jericho was the lion tamer, Drew.
No, that's, I think, his finisher is the lion tamer.
There you go.
He's Lionheart, Chris Jericho, if you want to go way back to his Winnipeg bar roots wrestling days there, Mr. Ginsburg.
Did you guys see Bruce Boudreau, by the way, talking about his favorite wrestlers? I'm not sure who asked him in his post-game or pre-game presser, but that was hilarious. He said the Hitman was his favorite, which was obviously my favorite. Anybody who's listened to the show knows that I'm a big Hart Foundation. Shout out to the late Jim the Anvil Neidhart.
Is he dead?
Yeah, he passed away.
Oh, okay. Well, sorry to hear that. Did not know that. Did not know you were big into the Hart Foundation either. But in any event, we'll file that under things we didn't know, and a good way to start this Saturday morning. A quick look at the Out of Town scoreboard last night, because I don't know how much attention people.
Well, if they read the morning papers, Drew, in the notes, they would see that I mentioned it.
Well, there you go. Dave M mentioned it in the on the legalcurve.com, so you can check that out while you're watching us at the same time. Yesterday in an upset, people thought that the Jets would be entering today's game against the Oilers probably only 3 points behind the final playoff spot. But yesterday on the scoreboard, it didn't really work out so well. The Dallas Stars won. They won in a shootout against the Chicago Blackhawks. It was 1-0 final. In that game. Not a real surprise. I don't think anybody expected the Stars to lose to the Blackhawks, because really, who loses to the... Oh, wait, sorry. And then
especially 1-0 too, Drew. You just rarely see 1-0 games, regardless of which teams are playing, right?
That's true. It's usually you do see a little more offense than that, but apparently it was a good goaltending battle between Marc-Andre Fleury and Jake Ottinger, according to our buddy Sean Reynolds, who tweeted about it. But then the real upset last night happened when the LA Kings defeated the Vegas Golden Knights in Vegas in overtime by a 4-3 margin. So the Kings get the full 2 points there, which obviously doesn't help the Winnipeg Jets in their race for the final playoff spot. 2 games were all, they were both 3-point games, which is, of course, disappointing. But I guess on the positive side of things, if the Jets really go on a run, both the Nashville Predators and the Minnesota Wild lost in regulation. So I'd say more bad than good. But anyways, there's your quick look of a Friday night out-of-town scoreboard before we dive deep into the Winnipeg Jets in what is a very big weekend for them, with 2 teams against the cities in Alberta. The Oilers this afternoon, the Flames on Monday afternoon. Let me ask you guys this. The Jets, since the All-Star break, are 4-1-1. Very good record. Nothing wrong with that. Probably the best stretch of hockey the Jets have played really since the 9-3-3 start to the season. Is it real or is it a mirage? Which of the two would you align with? You can't sit on the fence, Ginsburg, because I know that's usually what you like to do.
I don't have a fence. Actually, the snow has toppled my fence over, so I don't have a fence. I can't sit on it, even if I wanted to.
Fair enough. Duly noted on that hardship. We've well documented the Ginsburg house that's collapsing around Ezzy while his wife is doing all the manual labor to try and keep it upright. But to my point, to my question, real or a mirage?
I think it's real. I mean, obviously, it's going to be tough, guys, still for the Jets to make the playoffs. And, Dave, Drew was mentioning, some of the scores last night. By the way, it's kind of, just wanted to throw this in there. It's kind of funny, LA Vegas, because LA, of course, was the other team that was rumored to want Jack Eichel, right? Yeah. So LA, again, I don't think LA is a Stanley Cup contender, but at the very least, you got to give the Kings credit, guys, for turning their fortunes around, right? Because the Kings have been, let's be honest, a bit of a laughing stock here. And obviously, Philip Deneau, we talked about that in the offseason. He's had a good season. He just gives them much more depth up the middle. Drew Doughty recently played his 1,000th, career game. But I'm going on a bit of a tangent here. But we talked about it after the Kraken game. Like, most likely the Jets are going to have to beat out a Pacific team, even though the Nashville Predators are starting to get, a little bit more, in the Jets' sight lines here, 8 points back, right? And I believe the Jets have a game in hand, if I'm not mistaken, or 2 games in hand, right?
2 games in hand, yeah.
So the Jets can obviously catch Dallas. That's no problem. To your point,
Ezzy, the Preds have lost 4 in a row.
Exactly. And the Jets, as you said, are 4-1-1. So that's what happens, right? Instead of being 12 or 13 points back, now you're 8 points back. But I think, we would all agree, like Colorado, Minnesota, St. Louis, it's going to be very tough for the Jets to, crack into the top 3. So that's what we're talking about here. Most likely it's going to be a second wild card spot, because the first wild card spot is most likely going to be the 4th place team in the Central, which again could be the Jets. But, right now what they've done is they've put them in a situation, the Jets have put themselves in a situation where they can control their own destiny, right? Like, if you come out and you're 1-4-1 as opposed to 4-1-1, well, then you're hoping that, other teams go on slides, and you're hoping just to, stay in the race mathematically. But right now they're right in the thick of it. I'm not sure why Dave left there, Drew, but obviously he didn't like what I was saying. So hopefully Dave M pops right back into the
I think he's having a brief technical issue. So Dave M will be right back, undoubtedly. So keep going there. Don't let that derail your train of thought.
Well, yeah. So not only are they back in the playoff race and they're within striking distance of teams like Dallas and LA. I mean, it's the way that they've played. And, you start with the 2 back-to-back games. The second game of the back-to-back game. So obviously we're talking about the game against Nashville and the game against Seattle. Terrible starts, go down 2-0 in both games. And, they stuck to their game plan, and we've seen an offensive explosion. Now, they're going to run into a little bit of adversity here this afternoon because obviously Cole Perfetti's not going to be in the lineup, and he's been playing really well. We've talked about that a lot about that on not only the Saturday show but the post-game shows. So Evgeny Svechnikov is going to draw in. So obviously, they're going to...
We don't know that for sure. We suspect that it's going to be Svechnikov because I wouldn't expect that Adam Brooks is going to get right back into the lineup.
And Dave Lowry did mention Svechnikov is going in yesterday.
Oh, did he? Okay, yeah. I apologize. In that case.
No, it's okay. I mean, that happened less than 24 hours ago, right? Because it was either Mike McIntyre or our buddy Kenny Wiebe. Not that Mike McIntyre isn't our buddy as well. Both our buddies. But you just had to do the math. And you're right, Drew. I think the turnaround for Adam Brooks, I mean, we don't even know if Adam Brooks is in Winnipeg.
No,
right? We just don't know. And
you'd expect them to get at least a practice in. So, I mean, I would assume that if the team is practicing tomorrow, and I believe they are, I haven't seen tomorrow's schedule yet, but I would assume that if they're practicing tomorrow, and Brooks might be on the ice for that practice, and they're not going to put him in the lineup before he at least gets a practice under his belt and, introduces himself to the teammates.
Well, and just quickly touching on that, I thought that was a really smart move by Chevy. And Dave M, documented. I mean, Brooks was a brief member of the Montreal Canadiens. I think, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't he part of Vegas as well? And then Toronto's reclaimed him.
Toronto claimed him from Vegas, and the Jets, and then they tried to put him through to the minors, and the Jets claimed him from Toronto.
Right, there you go. So he's kind of been, up and down. He's been like Gary the Suitcase Smith, if you remember that old Winnipeg Jets reference. So Brooks is just a smart acquisition, right? Like he's a guy that just gives you more depth. We talked about that, in terms of guys like, Christian Reichel and David Gustafsson. So, just a smart move. Brooks is a guy who's put up really good numbers with the Toronto Marlies. So he's a guy that, if you do get into some injury trouble like the Jets have, and I think that's part of it. So I think that's something to look out for. And that's obviously, not ideal for the Jets going up against the, offensive powerhouse Oilers here. But I think, what you've seen on this homestand is the Jets are finding ways to win, as opposed to earlier in the season, pre-All-Star break, Drew, when they were basically finding ways to lose, right? So I think, this Jets team has a long way to go. I mean, they're still going up the hill, but as opposed to being at the very bottom of the hill, at least they're kind of getting closer to the, middle point of the hill, if that's a way that you want to look at it, right? So obviously, they're going to have to follow that up. And today's game against Edmonton.
Yay! He's back! He's back! Yay!
I was just pumping your tires about your work on illegalcurve.com, Dave. We missed you.
As he stopped bad-mouthing Dave, I thought it was inappropriate and rude that he wasn't here to defend himself when you were trashing him like that.
I don't know if I've ever said anything bad about Dave M. Drew, like, you know that I badmouth you on a daily basis. My tweet yesterday to Mike McIntyre was, Pierre-Luc Dubois was saying that he doesn't wake up and intentionally annoy people. And my tweet was, I intentionally annoyed IC Drew. So, I mean, the Jets have a big test coming up. And it's not like, guys, if the Jets lose, today's game, they've erased all the good work that they've done on the homestand, because they would still be 500 on the homestand. But let's make no mistake here. You touched on it right off the top, Drew. LA won again, right? We thought Vegas was probably going to beat LA just, based on the, Jack Eichel boost alone, right? So the Jets have to keep it going here against the Oilers. But what they've done is they've put themselves in a position to control their own destiny, and they're firm back in the playoff race. So that's a good thing if you're a Jets fan.
Dave M., after you've had time to collect your thoughts regarding my very hard-hitting question.
I know. I was like, well, here's a good way to, I don't have to worry about sitting on the fence. I can just get off the fence.
You can just leave. You don't exactly. I can't track you down and accuse you of being a fence sitter if you're not here at all.
Yeah.
So the question for you, my friend, real, 4-1-1, Mirage, back to reality is coming soon.
Okay, well, I mean, I would say it's real because they put the points in the standings bank, right? They got those 9 points and they've accumulated them and they've put themselves back into contention. Now, they did it in ways that I think against better teams, especially against Seattle, the amount of good opportunities that they gave up that Seattle just didn't have finishers to execute would be problematic against a team like the Calgary Flames or the Edmonton Oilers or, Dallas Stars even have a lot of offensive firepower that if you're giving them those kind of looks, is it a chance that there's, a 3-4-0 lead for a Dallas Stars team if the Jets have a slow start? Yeah, well, for sure, because guys like Ben and Sagan and Roberts, I mean, they've got a laundry list of guys. So I just think that they need to improve their defensive play. But I think it's real. I definitely think that there's no question about it. You look at the numbers. The numbers point to the fact that the Scheifele-Wheeler combination have resurrected from the dead, essentially, since that All-Star break. They've changed their game. They've played a significantly better game. So you can't watch these games and not think that the Jets have been a better team than they were prior to the All-Star break. It's just they've got the wins to back them. And sometimes you can win on the strength of a goaltender stealing games for you. Well, Connor Hellebuyck hasn't been stealing games. So you can't attribute it to that.
If anything, Comrie stole the game.
Yeah, Comrie, well, he helped. There's no question because, like I said, the two goals.
Comrie played, I think, as well as Hellebuyck, had been playing. And it's not necessarily a shot at Connor Hellebuyck, but Comrie came in on Thursday against the Kraken, and he made the saves you'd expect him to make. There were some that he didn't make that I don't think you can necessarily fault him for. But Eric Comrie, as we've said, hasn't played a ton this year. But more often than not, he has been exactly what you need in a backup goaltender.
That's right. And so I think, it becomes a function, Drew, of this team needing to continue this role. Like we talked about, you couldn't just win one, lose one. And the Jets very much have to beat Edmonton because as I said, you're up against specific teams now who are ahead of you and looking for that to secure that final Edmonton obviously right now is in the third Pacific spot, tied with LA, I think. But the reality is that you can't worry about that. You just have to play these games, and again, it becomes a function of you have to beat the Calgarys, you have to beat the Edmontons, you have to beat Dallas. I mean, that game is critical for the Winnipeg Jets, and then Colorado. Hello, there's a huge test. So yeah, the Jets. I mean, you're going to say real or a mirage. I think it's real, but I also think the bigger test is upcoming against. I mean, I shouldn't say that because you had to beat Minnesota. Right? Like twice. And look at where Minnesota is in the standings and look at where the Jets are. Now,
and Minnesota lost again last night, right, Dave?
I was going to say, and that's one of the points I was going to make when Drew's was opening with the way the standings were, is that you're right. And as you said it too, like Nashville looks like they're coming a little bit back down to earth. They're in a bit of a slide, and there's consternation in Nashville Nation, I think, because
hang on, that's dropping some beat there, Dave. Some consternation in Nashville Nation. Consternation, Nashville Nation. I like it.
God. All right, well, I appreciate that, Drew. I didn't know I was.
And we're done.
Yeah, like now the show's.
Dave, Drew, what do you got in that coffee there? I hope it's. I hope there's Bailey's in that coffee.
Hey, I had a good workout this morning, bright and early. I got the endorphins coursing through my veins. I'm ready to rip off some meat and just really go deep and get the energy going.
Well, anyway,
also drugs, lots of drugs.
Yes. Okay, that would be good too. So, look,
I'm just picturing Drew doing chin-ups with like the letters of Ginsburg, like on his knuckles.
Oh, on his knuckles.
That's just what I'm picturing right now.
Jerry, hello. Jerry, hello.
Anyways, so I just think that I think it's real. I think that what they've been able to do, and again, you're getting the depth scoring, which is what we've talked about. In the sense, sorry, not depth scoring. You're getting the primary scoring. Mm-hmm. You're getting Wheeler and Scheifele contributing like we've talked about that they can do. And you're doing this without Nikolai Ehlers. And I did a health check yesterday on the Jets lineup because Dave Lowry gave an update on the number of players.
Can you do a health check on me as well?
Yeah. It's A-okay.
The meter broke. It's like, between healthy and unhealthy. It's like,
the scale just read you're fat.
So anyways, I just think that it's, you're going to be without Perfetti. He's a little bit longer than day to day. You're probably going to continue to be without Andrew Kopp. We don't know 100%, but he listed him as day to day yesterday. So I would imagine he's probably not playing today, but you never know. But again, we'll have to wait till 2:30 p.m. when the warm-up skate gets underway, and then we'll have a better indication as to who is playing and who isn't. But ultimately, you've gotten it done without like a major piece like Nikolai Ehlers, and you're showing that you can do this. So if you can keep this roll going, if you can beat an Edmonton today or beat Calgary on Monday, and then have a great game against Dallas, maybe get Nikolai Ehlers back, suddenly your team is a lot less of a paper dragon. There's a lot more teeth to it. And so that's what the Jets have to do, and they have to prove it because what's the one thing we've talked about consistently? This team no longer has the ability to, fool around with their points. They need the points. Every game is a critical game for this team. So, you put the 4-1-1 or whatever it is in the back window. Yeah. And now you just focus on the Edmonton Oilers today because they're ahead of you in the standings. You need the 2 points and you need to be desperate.
And guys, I just wanted to quickly throw in there, Drew, it shows you how tight it is in the West that, one game and obviously the game we're talking about coming up is this afternoon's game against Edmonton. But the game I'm talking about that obviously was the big disappointment, the only blip on the radar, obviously, on this homestand was the Chicago game, right? So if they beat Chicago, they're only 2 back of Dallas, right? And obviously, you know, they would be closer to other teams ahead of them as well. But the point is, that's why this game is so important. I saw a few people talking about, you know, well, if the Jets lose to Edmonton this afternoon, you know, then they're only 500 on the homestand. And I agree. Like, especially if you're not able to, if you lose in regulation, obviously that's going to be very disappointing. And obviously the way the Jets are playing, there's no reason why they can't beat the Oilers. I mean, the Oilers are very hot right now, 4 wins under Jay Woodcroft, right? So it's going to be a big test, but Dave makes a good point. The Jets haven't, you know, defeated any slouches, right? Like they've defeated Minnesota twice. They beat a good Nashville team, even though Nashville's struggling, you know, they're obviously having a bounce back season. So today's game is important, but it really just shows you how close this is, guys, that you can't rest on your laurels. You got to keep going. So even though it's not going to be an easy game, as I mentioned, when you're up against McDavid and Draisaitl and the like, Evander Kane has been a nice addition to the Oilers. Like the Jets have to keep this going if they really want to put a dent in their standings.
Well, it's funny, you talked about the upcoming schedule, and you look at and you're talking about the Jets 4-1-1 since the All-Star break. You look at the team, sort of the best team since the All-Star break. Well, the Calgary Flames are undefeated since the All-Star break. They're 5-0. We know the Jets play them on Monday afternoon. Then it's the Jets at 4-1-1. Then you got Dallas, who the Jets play next Wednesday down in the Lone Star State. They're 4-1 since the All-Star break. And the Oilers, they're right behind the Dallas Stars. They're 4-2 since the All-Star break. So, you know, if you're looking at the top 5 teams since the All-Star break, the Jets are one of them, and then they play 3 of the other 4 in their next 3 games. So, you know, it's certainly not an easy part of the schedule, but the Jets have had their success against those difficult teams. And you know, this is the first. I was on TSN 1260 in Edmonton yesterday.
I was just waiting for you to mention that, Drew.
And I was waiting for you to comment on the fact that I commented on mentioning.
And then I was waiting to comment on you commenting on my comment.
But, you know, we were talking about, and so I was on with my buddy Alan Mitchell, Twitter. Yeah, you can see, I mean, he's known as Low Tide on Twitter. And we were talking about it, and, you know, we said, you know, talking about the Jets season. And remember, it was that second game in Edmonton. The Jets and the Oilers played that back-to-back. And the Jets won game 1 handily here in Winnipeg. And then the next night they went and played in Edmonton, and the Jets lost in that shootout. That was the tipping point. They were 9-3-3 prior to that game. And then when they lost that game to the Oilers in Edmonton, in that shootout, that was when the season first completely went off the rails. So I wonder, if the Jets remember that, if the Jets are using that as, you know, to some degree, I don't know necessarily motivation, but the Jets have actually had success against the Oilers earlier this season. And the Jets were
not to mention the playoffs, obviously.
Not to mention the playoffs last year. The Jets have been able to actually mitigate the damage done by Connor McDavid. Josh Morrissey and Dylan DeMello, who I think will more than likely get the McDavid matchup in today's game, have done a pretty good job in neutralizing him. And you know that that's not an easy task for anyone to do, in that, you know, I don't have to tell anybody who's watching this that Connor McDavid is the best player in the league, in my opinion. But, you know, the Jets will need that kind of attention to detail to really shut down that Edmonton Oilers team. And it is an Oilers team that's not at full health like the Jets. They lost Jesse Puljujärvi for a month. We talked about that on Thursday's postgame show, where Puljujärvi left, I think, in the second period of the Oilers game. I forget who they played on Thursday, not important. And now he's out for a month. So the Oilers will be without
Chicago?
No, it was Anaheim. Oh,
okay.
Remember, the Ducks were up 2-0, and I think the Oilers won 7-4 or 7-2 or something.
I just saw the Evander Kane versus Marc-Andre Fleury video where they were like basically and Jones, and they were going to kill each other. So.
Oh, okay, fair enough. But you know, this is the Jets are obviously going to have to try and neutralize the impact of Connor McDavid, and the Jets have done well. The games against the Avalanche and the bad game against the Wild notwithstanding, have done pretty well in stepping up in weight class against their competition. It's the games against the lesser weights, the lighter weights, that they've struggled. So this is another one of those tests today to see what the Jets are. Are the Jets trying to, you know, are they going to be able to crawl their way back into the playoff race? Because as some people in the chat have said, you know, finishing this homestand at 500 isn't good enough. because really right now they should be undefeated on the homestand, given that they choked away the game against the Blackhawks.
Well, it would be good enough, right? Like the point is it's good enough to get you, back within striking distance, but you're not in a playoff spot. Like it's been a long time, guys, since the Jets have been in a playoff spot. So you're right, Drew. I mean, not only do you have to beat Edmonton, but we talked about Calgary on Monday is huge. Calgary looks really good. Like Calgary was looking good, guys, before they got Tyler Toffoli, right? So it's not like, the Flames were struck. Like it's not like an Oilers situation where the coaching change, brought on the 4-game winning streak. Calgary was already a really dominant team. Like Johnny Gaudreau, for a guy that was the subject of trade rumors, like we thought, Gaudreau was going to go east, like maybe go to Philly or, closer to where he's from, right? And he's in the MVP conversation. Like he really is. So Gaudreau's playing really well. I mean,
Calgary's the best team in the Pacific. I mean, it's not, and they're only 2 points up on Vegas, but if you look at it a little bit closely, I mean, the Flames have a goal differential of plus 52. I mean, that's second best in the Pacific in the Western Conference, just behind Colorado. So people who are assuming that it's going to be an Avalanche Golden Knights Western Conference final, I think are overlooking the Flames and just how good they are and how deep they are. And they don't really have very many holes, if any, in their lineup. I mean, Jacob Markstrom has been absolutely the answer there to the goaltending question. Then you add in the forward group, add Tyler Toffoli to that. This Calgary Flames team is a team that absolutely no one is going to want to mess with. They've won 8 in a row, guys. I mean, that tells you pretty much what you need to know about the Calgary Flames and the test that the Jets have against them on Monday when they face Calgary Monday afternoon in Hogtown.
Absolutely. And, you mentioned Dallas, they're playing pretty well. We just obviously saw the Stars, beat the Jets. So, there's a lot of hockey left to be played. It looked like, we were going to be maybe dreading March and these games wouldn't, have any impact on the standings coming out of the All-Star break. But like we said, the Jets with the 4-1-1 record have put themselves within striking distance. So, I mean, we don't want to overstate the importance of today's game. But if the Jets lose it, then obviously it's kind of that cliche, one step forward, one step back type of thing. So I think, going back to what you said about, the Jets doing a good job shutting down Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, it's kind of like, the LeBron James, I like to use that analogy, or, back in the day, Shaq was one of my all-time favorite players. Like these types of dominant players, they're most likely going to get on the scoreboard. You just have to minimize what they do. You just don't want to see a McDavid hat trick, right? Like even if he does score a beautiful goal, and that's something that I think, going back to what we were saying before about the difference between the way the Jets have played lately as opposed to before the All-Star break, is that the Jets aren't getting down a goal or two and letting that change the way that they've played, right? Like guys like Scheifele and Wheeler and Dubois, like the Dubois goal, like I think we didn't spend enough time on that goal, like coming out of the penalty box and that shot, right, goes off the post. Like that was the type of goal that a guy puts the team on his back. And I think that's what we've been seeing. Dubois, Scheifele, Wheeler, I would throw Josh Morrissey in there, obviously Kyle Connor. Like these guys are putting the team on their back and they're saying, okay, we're down a couple of goals. We're going to be the ones that score the big goals. And Scheifele and Wheeler specifically are guys that have, struggled to put the puck in the net. Murat's going to come up in a few minutes here. He wrote about that in The Athletic yesterday. Like these guys are turning it up right when the Jets need it. So they need that to continue. It's also nice to get goals from guys like Dominic Toninato. And then with Perfetti out of the lineup, right? Like you're hoping that even if Svechnikov doesn't chip in a goal, Dave, like you're hoping that, he's able to give them a good, however, many minutes he plays, whether it's 10 minutes or whatever.
Well, I hope it's not 3 minutes, is I think what the Jets fans need is you need some contribution from your depth forwards, even if it's not necessarily on the scoreboard. It's in a minute eating, effort at the very least. Like you said, Murat Ates of The Athletic is up next. Post-game show this afternoon around 5:45. Dave M and I will drive the bus on that as we give Fozzie Bear the afternoon off. Stay with us. You're watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, it's Aaron from Bernstein's Deli.
That's right, Ezzy. I'm the guy who makes all your sandwich dreams come true.
So when you think Illegal Curve, what comes to you?
How about juicy chicken schnitzel, grilled salami, fried onions, melted cheddar cheese, and honey mustard on toasted, thick-cut city rye bread?
Man, that's like the holy grail of sandwiches.
And so it shall be known as the Illegal Curve Sandwich.
The Illegal Curve Sandwich. Try it today at Bernstein's Deli. Find us at Corridon and Lanark or online at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
A good Saturday morning to you all. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. We're pleased to be joined, of course, by our good friend Murat Ates of The Athletic. And I know what everyone was thinking is just what this show needs, more beards. Murat, good morning. Good to see you. How are you?
Happy to provide. You know, the toque, the beard, Ezzy and I were talking in advance of this. He said there was a uniform and you guys never wear it. So here I am, ready to do my best.
Just throwing this out there, Murat, that you might want to take life advice from somebody that's not named Ezra Ginsburg. That's up to you to take. Do what you want with that piece of advice. But other people have tried that path, and it usually is
I have sage wisdom. I mean, the sage wisdom is it might lead you, down a very dark path to a random, house party. But the thing is, I have sage wisdom. That's true.
The sage
some sort of wisdom. Yeah, he's something all right. Murat, good morning. Obviously, we brought you on, talk about the Jets, talk about this afternoon's big contest against the Edmonton Oilers. I posed this question to my fine colleagues earlier to start the show. 4-1-1, the Jets are since the All-Star break. Some good wins in there. Very disappointing defeat to the Chicago Blackhawks. From your perspective, is it real or are they a mirage?
I think that their results over the last stretch are real. I think that there has been an elevation of their play. I think the single most important thing that's happened is they've started finishing. And, Mark Scheifele's highlight reel for the first half of the season was a bunch of getting stuffed in the low slot, getting robbed, not finishing 2-on-0s, skying one-timers, but creating chances. his highlight reel for the second half of the season is everything he touches turns to gold. And I think that's been the biggest turnaround. The Jets aren't leaning on teams in terms of, back in the 2018-19, at that era where the whole game got played in another team's end. You didn't have to Zamboni near Connor Hellebuck. This is not how the Winnipeg Jets are winning. But they are in these games, and I think that's a very real thing. And they are in these games against good teams. When you get that kind of finishing from Mark Scheifele, when Blake Wheeler's setting up goals like he does, and Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor are scoring, and finally you have two lines that are getting it done, well, that's going to lead to some wins in stretches for sure. Is a playoff spot real? I think that's still a very long journey.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. And I really enjoyed your article for The Athletic. I was reading it this morning about an hour before the show, talking about what you just mentioned, Scheifele, Wheeler, Morrissey, how they're leading the charge to the 4-1-1 turnaround. And Murat, you just mentioned Pierre-Luc Dubois, and I wanted to ask you about him because I think it was Weber, it might have been Kelly Moore. I imagine that you were, I kind of skipped ahead, so I think that you were in the coach availability, but I'm pretty sure it was Weber or Kelly Moore asked about the Pierre-Luc Dubois drawing minor penalties and taking minor penalties. And obviously, that was full on display because after he comes out of the penalty box, he scores there. But, what's kind of your take on that? Because, Dave Lowry kind of mentioned, well, that shows you how involved in the game he is. Like that was kind of his response. Obviously, that wasn't his entire response, but what's kind of your take on that with the amount of penalties he's taken, but also the amount of penalties he's drawn? Because that's kind of a weird statistic that you don't see with a lot of players.
Yeah, he's taken the most minor penalties in the National Hockey League this season. And I mean, putting a team shorthanded that often does tend to hurt. And for me, my first instinct when I see something like that is it kind of erodes a little bit of the value from the terrific season that he's had. You look for, no player's perfect. And I mean, I guess we're going to see two very close to that players here later this afternoon. So you look at the things that he does well, and certainly physicality is one of them. Certainly driving the puck to those dangerous areas is another. The goal he scored coming out of the penalty box set up by Blake Wheeler. That's the great Pierre-Luc Dubois. And there are penalties that he takes by being, big and strong and physical and imposing his will on the game. And then there's penalties that he takes too. And there have been a lot of them where it's a little bit of just a loose stick. He's got some high sticking minors. He's got some plays that I think are a little bit more casual in terms of his control of where his stick is, as opposed to him running people over. And I think that he could still be, a phenomenal, what a season he's had so far without some of those, careless stick infractions. And that's really, I think that's just the next evolution of his game and maturity, because obviously he's got the physicality and he's got the offense, and this has been a great year for him.
Murat, I want to ask you about Christian Reichel, because he's obviously someone I'm very familiar with, watching him with the Manitoba Moose. And, hard work is a kind of his calling card, but he got a bump up to the second or first line, whatever you want to call it, when Cole Perfetti went down. What have you thought of his game since he's been in the Jets lineup?
Yeah, you know what? I agree with that. I think he's been hardworking, and he has a chance at being an answer to a question Winnipeg's had for a year, essentially since Mason Appleton was claimed by Seattle. I thought at one point, maybe a couple of years ago, he may have been getting lost in the shuffle of all the different prospects and all the different people that get hype. And to watch the Moose, which I've done a little bit more this year, I've seen you a little bit more there. I realized that the first half of the season, I mean, with David Gustafsson, those guys play incredibly tough competition. They play, top penalty kill minutes. And, I was wondering, could Christian Reichel bring that to the Winnipeg Jets? Because if he can, then the who plays with Adam Lowry question we've seen Austin Pagansky on that right side. We've seen Christian Vesalainen do it. Jansen Harkins a little bit. I don't think we have an answer. And, Christian Reichel, chipping in on that zone entry by Kyle Connor and then passing it back and then setting up that offense. That's lovely. That's nice to see in a crucial part of the game, getting that bump up and then getting results. I don't think we're looking at a point per game just because he's going to get a little bit more minutes. You're going to look for that effort. You're going to look for that tenacity. And as long as he can contribute in the exact same ways that he's done in the AHL level, which is control where the game gets played, well, he'll be an extremely valuable guy to have on a line like that. And, sometimes I get these verbal typos, but he's a right-handed shot, is he not? And I think that they've been looking for that on that side as well for so long.
Murat Ates is our guest Saturday morning. We're live here on our YouTube channel. We're live on all of our social media platforms. A reminder, later this afternoon, the Illegal Curve post-game show right around 5:45, where we'll discuss what happens between the Jets and the Oilers in today's matinee. Now, Murat, when you come on this show, we ask you the hard question. So I don't know if you're prepared for this one, but that ladder in the background, impromptu wrestling ladder match or fixing light bulbs? The audience needs to know.
Well, I'm going to tell you a story. When I was in, I'm going to say grade 8, one of my best friends and I used a French video assignment as an excuse to learn various wrestling moves. And as a young teenage kid, I've been suplexed onto some extremely painful things. I quit wrestling professionally at 13 years old as a result of that. That's just for exploring some painting options that we're going to be getting to around here. So maybe not white walls, or that black trim you see right beside it has been bugging me. That's the personal stuff.
Go with eggshell, Murat. Go with eggshell. When we bought our house, Naomi wanted to go off-white, and then we ended up, I think the walls were like pink or something like that. So just go with a nice eggshell.
I appreciate that. It turns out there's about 1,800 shades of white and white adjacent colors. I'm over my head. We'll see.
Thank you. It's a good answer to that question. Getting back to the real subject matter, Adam Brooks claimed by the Jets yesterday off waivers. This is a guy who obviously, some teams like what he brings to the table because he's bounced around. But then again, at the same time, if he's bouncing around, that means some teams eventually fall out of favor with him. What do you see his role here in Winnipeg? Is he a placeholder while the team is going through some injuries up front, with Ehlers, of course, still being out, and Kopp, and now Perfetti? Or do you think that the Jets, really could see him carve out a longer-term role for the Winnipeg-born player?
I think it's the first, with chances of progressing into the second. I think that the claim gets made because of all these injuries to skilled left-handed players. Cole Perfetti a little bit longer than day to day, as per Dave Lowry yesterday. And, that's not great news for a guy who's had a great breakout year as a rookie. So Winnipeg was looking for somebody who could fill some of those same roles. He's a left-handed shot. He's played a really interesting season, claimed on waivers 4 times. I was talking to Jesse Granger, who loves you guys very much, out of Vegas, the Athletic. And
we love him
telling
too.
Me that Vegas claimed him, and then they had a tremendous amount of injuries at the time. So he'd get into the lineup. He'd play essentially second line minutes. Then he'd come out of the lineup when people got healthy. He'd play second line minutes again. He'd come out of the lineup. Didn't seem to stick on when everybody got healthy in the end, or find that chemistry that kept him productive at the NHL level when everybody came back, but was really productive for their AHL team. And I think that's largely been the story. At the NHL level, Adam Brooks has continued to look for his spot, look for that fit. I think he's well liked. Everybody, whether it's media or otherwise that I've talked to, really like his attitude. They say he's a proud Winnipegger, which is always fun. He'll know a way around the snow shovel, which we need very much right now. But I think that it's a case of he's here because Winnipeg needs somebody with a little bit of that offensive talent. He's not big or fast to the point where he's going to absolutely control the game, but he has skill and he's a smart player and he should fit in. And then the question is, when everybody does get back, will he be able to hold on to that spot? And I certainly wouldn't take a waiver wire pickup over Ehlers, Kopp, or Perfetti, but it seems like it'll be a while before the Jets have that chance.
Murat, I'm going to ignore what's going on in my head right now, which goes back to what you were talking about, trying wrestling moves when you were in grade 8, because right now I'm just fantasizing about choke slamming Drew off of that ladder. So I'm just gonna pretend that those voices in my head aren't happening right now. But
I'm just glad they're not saying burn things.
What?
I'm questioning my desire to take all
means.
that advice from you right now. Yeah.
Or a figure 4 leg lock, whatever you want, Drew. Murat knows that. He's a wrestling guy. Josh Morrissey, we talked about your most recent article in The Athletic, and the game-winning goal against Seattle is obviously, an obvious one. But he's just a pleasure to watch right now. Like I say this all the time to Dave, there's no shortage of guys on the Jets that can skate. But to me, this is kind of like vintage Josh Morrissey. Like, forget the offensive contributions for a second. Like, he just looks like a guy who's playing with that same confidence that he was, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago. What are you seeing as kind of the main reasons that are leading to his success right now? Is it, just him kind of, obviously going through, the hardships off the ice, obviously, and now having a new level of focus? Is it, playing with Dylan DeMello? I apologize if you can hear my kids in the background, but just how nice is it, I guess is what I'm saying, to see Josh Morrissey playing at the level that we've been accustomed to?
Well, I mean, to answer the literal question, how nice is it? Is phenomenal. I mean, he's one of the good guys of the NHL, right? If you've had a chance to deal with him at any point, he's a real kind, thoughtful, charismatic person. He treats media extremely well. He addresses people by name. Like, there's so many reasons to like this person as a person. As a player, he'd struggled for 2 years, and certainly, not to belabor what is a very real thing that it has been the story. I mean, his dad, eventually passing away after a battle with cancer for an extended period of time. I mean, that's got to be tough. And I don't know. I couldn't even imagine what it's like to go through that necessarily. And I don't know how that affects on ice performance, but certainly the bookend of the season that he's had seems to indicate that that's a major source of turnaround. Either way, he looks like he's playing with confidence. And I think for Josh Morrissey, that's the most important thing. He's trying things. He's skating. He's jumping into the play. His shot has been going off since day one of training camp. I mean, they were doing second power play drills. I think it was literally day one, and Nate Schmidt was teeing him up for one-timers, and he was going bar down in a way that I haven't seen from Josh Morrissey in a long time. That carried into the regular season. You saw him unload on that shot again, of course, teed up by Kyle Conrad on that nice play for the game winner. There are things that are going really well for him, and he's playing with that push, with that aggression. Metrics-wise, he's been Winnipeg's best defenseman throughout this season. Winnipeg got, they tried to acquire top four defenseman Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon. Well, they got one of their own back as well, which is a really, really big thing for them. And I still honestly think that he has room for more. I think that there's a little bit more ascension to Josh Morrissey's game yet. I like what we've seen, especially offensively, and especially when he has DeMello on his side. Good point to name him as well.
Murat, I have to ask you about the curious case of Evgeny Svechnikov, because he seems to have found a fit with this Jets team, and then he has kind of lost that fit and doesn't seem to be within the Dave Lowry structure unless he's been forced. When yesterday when he was asked, and he goes, "Well, we need 12 forwards, and he would be our 12th forward." So it's not as if it's we're happy to have him back. But do you think that there's a chance? And like I said, we don't know how the lines are going to be configured today. But do you think they go back to Connor, Dubois, Svechnikov? Because, muscle memory seems to be a thing in hockey, and that line was pretty good in the beginning of the season for the Jets. So do you think that they do that? Well, though, and again, I'm not asking to predict exactly, but do you think it makes sense to do that because of the success they had earlier in the season?
I think it makes some sense, to be sure. I mean, Winnipeg, usually under Paul Maurice, but I don't think Dave Lowry is too different, has generally liked to make the minimum number of changes possible when injuries strike or when opportunities go a different way because of different roster configurations. I don't think there's any appetite at all to change that top line of Stastny, Scheifele, and Wheeler. I think Lowry with Reichel and probably Christian Vesalainen probably continues into this game as well. So then it's a question of who gets that spot. I know Jansen Harkins took a few shifts there, looked good at a moment. He scored a really nice goal. Evgeny Svechnikov had even more success than that in the first half of the season there. I think Svechnikov makes sense for that, but at the same time, he doesn't really appear to be a Dave Lowry player to the point of the minutes that he's getting right now. And he also, I think Dave Lowry mentioned something about consistency yesterday as well, and when referencing Svechnikov's game. And I'm not sure what he needs to show to his coaching staff to say that, hey, with all of this chaos, I'm a guy that you can count on day in and day out. I thought that his performance by and large had sort of already gotten that job done. But then you see him a healthy scratch. He had one media availability with us about a month ago where he had been a healthy scratch. He was coming onto the fourth line, and he just looked kind of despondent. He sounded sad. And so I don't know if that fit in the second half of the season since Dave Lowry has taken over has been as perfect for Svechnikov as that found money beginning where it seemed like he was a top 6 player all of a sudden. And there's Gosh again. Gosh, didn't the Jets find a diamond in the rough? So we'll see what the future holds for him.
If you start saying "gosh darn," we're gonna have to ask you to hold on and maybe rein it in a little bit. Too many of the
I like the goshes, Murat. I have no problem with that.
They're nice. They're sort of sincere. I can go for a gosh every now and then.
Yeah,
we try,
exactly.
What we tell our kids, we don't want the kids using
Just don't start
harder language.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just in moderation, I think.
That's right. Everything in moderation. Murat Ates is our guest. Saturday morning, you're watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. 10 minutes before the top of the hour, the Jets and the Oilers, 3 o'clock this afternoon. IC post-game show right around 5:45 back here on our YouTube channel. Murat, based on the usage as of late, is Logan Stanley now ahead of Ville Heinola in the Jets depth chart, particularly on the left side of that defense?
I suspect that he is, and I suspect that that's been the story for since he broke into the NHL last year to start the season. Stanley had so much success on that third pairing, which I always like to throw the caveat because it's extreme, the sheltering that third pairing got with Logan Stanley on it in terms of who they play against and the matchups that they get. That doesn't take away from his success in that role. It just means that when Winnipeg was forced to play top 4 defensemen against elite competition, they avoided that pairing like gracious. I don't know what to say, but they avoided it. This year, it hasn't been quite as cut and dry as that. Ville Heinola has come in. He struggled early, for sure he did. He came around. He started doing Ville Heinola things and really contributing to the offense. But I really do think that the Jets see Logan Stanley as ahead of him in the depth chart, that Heinola is a bit of a bonus right now if things go well for him, whereas Stanley's part of that top 6 that they like to run. I have room for more of a rotation in that. They have such different skill sets, and I think Ville Heinola has the higher ceiling. But I think Stanley's the guy. I think he's the one that, especially, Dave Lowry sees as, ready to play. I mean, against a team like Minnesota, he said it wasn't about the physicality, but I'm sure that the physicality played a role. And there's a sense that maybe, a big, strong guy like that might be a little bit more playoff stretch ready. And we'll see what we get. And I think we'll see more Stanley than Heinola as long as everybody stays healthy.
Rod, I wanted to ask you about Eric Comrie, and I hope Dave M isn't mad at me for stealing his Eric Comrie question because he's watched him obviously way more than I have with the Moose. But I was just so impressed with Comrie, right? Like, he hadn't played in a while. It was roughly 3 weeks. And, on the post-game show after the Kraken game, we talked about the Riley Shane chance in the first period. Ryan Donato had a point-blank chance that, just hit him right in the jersey. It was just based on aggressive, positioning. But I mean, just how impressive was that? And obviously, he lets in, 3 goals. None of those goals I thought were weak goals. But, I thought in a game in which he didn't face a lot of rubber, he made some really key saves. And that was really important because we've talked about it. Every single game, whether you're playing the Wild, the Kraken, or the Oilers, the Jets need every single point that they can get.
Oh, absolutely. I think this whole season has been a real pleasure from Eric Comrie. He came into it with so many question marks. The sample size of his NHL career was small, but it didn't look good. He certainly had some rough nights and had not had a lot of defensive support, but certainly there had been a lot of goals against. And he had that tumultuous year of playing for various different organizations, moving around the league. And then he was back, and it was a question of, okay, can Winnipeg count on him? Well, I mean, they're not going to him an awful lot, but when he gets in that crease, it seems like they can. He stole the game against St. Louis, I thought, in a lot of ways, or he kept Winnipeg in it in a lot of ways, I should say. And then, against Seattle as well, he was every bit worthy of the win. And I think has been giving Winnipeg confidence that maybe a year ago at this time, they wouldn't necessarily have been able to have had Comrie been, in the fold. The other thing is, he's a classy guy because he comes into the post-game victory press conference wearing the Anne-Renee Desbiens jersey and speaks right off the hop, as we're all struck by it, to how proud he's been to wear the Canadian, wear the Maple Leaf at various times in his career, and how proud he was of the women's team for their gold medal. So I think a lot of things are coming up Comrie right now. It's been a good stretch of hockey for him, and he's convinced, I think, Winnipeg, that when he does get in behind Hellebuyck, who's the workhorse and rightfully so, that, they're not leaving 2 points on the table just because the backup's playing.
Murat, just before Dave asked the question here, I like the Desbiens jersey, but can we not get him a Kristen Campbell from Brandon jersey? Like, come on, represent Manitoba.
Yeah, I wonder who did the shopping on that, but I'm here for that performance.
Maybe Hellebuyck was wearing that one, Ezzy. We don't know. But anyways, Murat, I'm going to ask you about Cole Perfetti. I mean, Dave Lowry said yesterday that he's a little longer than day to day with an upper body injury. But what were you seeing from the 2020 first rounder in this stretch that's showing that he's cementing his spot more and more in the NHL?
Yeah, I think that it was almost as if the All-Star break was this nice little rest and refresh where all of the processing, all of those high-speed reads, all of the playmaking vision that he has, all those lessons seemed to catch up with him in an awful hurry. He was already acquitting himself well. He was already creating chances. But I think coming out of the break, it seemed as though he had found another level to his game in terms of playmaking. And whether it was when Heinola came in and they were doing all sorts of give and goes, and Heinola jumping into lanes, just like with Manitoba and Perfetti finding him, he was making some really nice passes. There's one to Paul Stastny that still stands out in my mind, where Perfetti goes into a corner, shoulder checks 3 seconds earlier, and then fires it right out of the corner to Stastny in front of the net. And these are the types of plays made at NHL speed that are going to set him apart when, he returns to health and gets back in the lineup. He processes the game so quickly. And I think that we already knew that. We already knew it was coming. We already knew that he could be a productive player in the NHL. But I think that these last stretch of games, unfortunately leading up to that injury, he's demonstrated it more consistently, more often. I think he's processing even faster than he was a little bit ago. And it's led to a lot of dangerous chances for the Winnipeg Jets, especially that Kyle Connor breakaway goal where he reads that the defender hadn't pivoted yet, fires it across. So not only do you have the advantage of Connor's speed down the wing, you have the advantage of a passer who knew that the defenseman was off balance or was going to need to make a turn. I mean, that's some really high-level stuff. And it's the kind of stuff that's going to make up for the fact his own foot speed isn't great. His size is obviously not going to be his strength. But he's shown that he's still growing already from the way that he processes the game.
Murat, last question for you. Dating back to the playoffs last year, the Jets are 5-0-1 in their last 6 against the Oilers. We know that saying that the Jets have a recipe for shutting down Connor McDavid is an immediate recipe for disaster. But where's their success come from? I mean, Morrissey and DeMello seem to have been the ones getting that difficult matchup. What have they been able to do from your perspective that has been able to at least mitigate Connor McDavid?
I mean, they played the playoff series of their lives. I'm gonna say, they were phenomenal there. They were also very mean. I think that there was a chippiness to both of those players' games that you don't see as consistently, but they raised that level of sort of getting in the faces of Draisaitl and McDavid. There were some rough hits, to be sure. And beyond that, I mean, Connor Hellebuyck showed up when he needed to do it as well. The chances did exist. It's just there were ever so slightly fewer of them, and Hellebuyck was there. So I think that's the case. If you're going to have any success against players like that, it has to come from everywhere. It has to be a terrific defensive effort. It has to be a goaltender that shows up and makes the saves. And then maybe even you get lucky and they hit a post here or there from time to time too. Because, I mean, to have 2 players tied, I think, for the lead in National Hockey League scoring is a phenomenal thing. They get their chances, they get their points. And the other thing will be to solve the mystery and the riddle of one Jay Woodcroft, who's taken over. Todd's brother has had an awful lot of success with that team as well. Edmonton's firing on all cylinders in a way that they weren't, just a few short weeks ago.
One addendum to that question, Pierre-Luc Dubois. Right now, McDavid and Draisaitl, as of late, haven't been on the same line. Does Dave Lowry try and match up Dubois against one of them, or is he happy to sort of flip-flop the Dubois line against either McDavid or Draisaitl, depending on how he's running the bench, do you think?
Well, you know what? That's interesting to me because I think Dubois had a really strong season from a two-way perspective. And certainly, I harp on Mark Scheifele's defense, even as he's been scoring so many goals and winning hockey games, let's be clear. There have been defensive miscues as well. But I think when you have Stastny, Scheifele, and Wheeler, I think that might be your secondary matchup line from a coaching perspective, assuming that, Adam Lowry gets quite a lot of the other. That said, Dubois had two-way success as well, and he's been able to sort of play that game down low, protect the front of his net, and then create offense as well. So I had assumed in my mind, in the back of my mind, that it would be the veterans up on line one that would get that secondary matchup. But we'll see, because, like you say, when you have a center like Pierre-Luc Dubois to add to the defense, maybe there's a little bit less fear there too.
It ought to be a good one this afternoon. The Jets and the Oilers. Murat Ates will have it covered for theathletic.com.
No, Drew. Murat freaking Ates.
Okay, yes, exactly. Pardon me for
Hopefully, did you catch that Seth Rollins reference there?
I didn't.
Seth freaking Rollins. Okay, well, obviously I watch more wrestling than the three of you, so
clearly,
Murat mentioned wrestling earlier, so I thought I'd bring it full circle.
Is that why you're not on the show this afternoon? Because you're going to be watching wrestling or something?
I am. I'm actually in a cage match later today, Drew.
Well, my money's on your kids if that helps at all. Murat, thank you. We'll read all about it in theathletic.com. Appreciate you joining us this morning.
Hey, thanks so much, guys. It was so fun.
Thanks, Murat.
Thanks, Murat. Let's go to break. When we come back, more on the Jets and the Oilers. We'll look at some of the Jets forward matchups. We'll talk about the Adam Brooks waiver claim. Much more to come. And then at the bottom of the hour, for the Edmonton perspective, Derek Van Diest is going to join us. Stay with us. Hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show up next on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, it's Aaron from Bernstein's Deli.
That's right, Ezzy. I'm the guy who makes all your sandwich dreams come true.
So when you think Illegal Curve, what comes to you?
How about juicy chicken schnitzel, grilled salami, fried onions, melted cheddar cheese, and honey mustard on toasted thick-cut city rye bread?
Man, that's like the holy grail of sandwiches.
And so it shall be known as the Illegal Curve Sandwich.
The Illegal Curve Sandwich. Try it today at Bernstein's Deli. Find us at Corridon and Lanark or online at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. Always great to catch up with Murat. Always a fun talk with him. Here's a little interesting stat. This comes courtesy JFresh Hockey on Twitter. He's a really good Twitter follow. If you're not familiar with his work, really sort of explains some of the analytics in digestible and easy to understand formats. Of all the NHL players, the second from the absolute dead last in terms of negative goals above expected is Blake Wheeler with minus 6.6. That doesn't mean that Blake Wheeler is a bad player. What that means is that of his expected goals, which is a fancy stat, he hasn't been able to capitalize to that degree. Only Jordan Staal of the Carolina Hurricanes is lower than Blake Wheeler. So if everything regresses to the mean, as it oftentimes does, you might see some more goals from the Winnipeg Jets captain. A little bit of an interesting stat that I stumbled upon during the commercial break.
Surprising to me, to be honest with you, Drew. Like his goal scoring struggles have been well documented this year. Obviously,
right.
Wheeler's putting the puck in the net a lot more, but for all of the criticism, and I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here. He scored a couple goals against Nashville, obviously, and scored a goal.
Is it going to be about wrestling or is it going to be about hockey?
No. It's not going to be about wrestling. It's going to be about the captain.
Okay.
He faced a lot of criticism earlier, and he hasn't had the best luck, right? Like the injury, COVID, everything like that. But when he steps up his game when the Jets need it the most, you have to give him a lot of credit, and he has been excellent since the All-Star break. And we talked to Murat about that. He wrote about that for The Athletic, him and Scheifele. So even though, Scheifele, he has his defensive shortcomings, and Scheifele and Wheeler have not had, if in the totality of their year, they haven't had what you would say are great years, even though they're really starting to turn it around, between games 45 and 50. That's all I'm saying. Wheeler has been exceptional. He's been the Wheeler of old, the Wheeler of 2017, 2018. So I just wanted to get that in there, even though that stat obviously is pretty shocking. Not that shocking considering that he hasn't put the puck in the net a lot, even though he's more known for his playmaking. Just wanted to say that he has been excellent on this homestand.
He has certainly been very good for the Winnipeg Jets and their 4-1-1 record since the All-Star break. I mean, tops in the NHL in terms of points. Him and Scheifele are since the All-Star break. 12 points for Wheeler in the 6 games, 11 for Scheifele in the 6 games. And interesting to come, who's right behind Wheeler and Scheifele since the All-Star break? You guys know? Not on the Jets. Do you guys know who is third in terms of points since the All-Star break in the NHL?
Vander Kane,
Patrick Laine, 10 points.
Oh, yeah, that's
the All-Star break. Yeah, 6 goals, 4 assists.
But Hattie the other night, I know that
he's been playing well.
I have him in my hockey pool. I have Laine and Dubois, so they've both been great picks.
And how are you doing in that hockey pool?
Not bad. 3rd out of 10 teams.
Okay.
Top I was in 1st for a while. I'm with our buddy Neil Rockman, so I've had some pretty. I mean, it's a 30-round pool. It's a pretty cool pool. Like 2 points for a goal. Shout out to Dr. Leon Stein. He's the one that runs the pool, and our buddy Zach Stein as well, who I believe we had as a guest on the show once live from Glendale. But I think we did because he had a hole in one or something. Dave might remember that. Richie would definitely remember that. It's interesting because you have to take 4 defensemen anyways. And my rookie's Trevor Zegras, and I've had guys like, Andrew Mangiapane and Troy Terry have unbelievable career years. Because as I mentioned, you get 2 points for a goal. So Mangiapane is really, anyways, Dubois and Laine, just because of the trade aspect, I thought it was pretty cool that we got both of them.
There you go. And there's nothing that people like more than listening to people talk about their hockey pools and or fantasy football drafts. Undoubtedly. Let me ask you guys, I asked Murat about the waiver acquisition of Adam Brooks. What do you guys think? I mean, the Jets figure that there's probably no risk in this. They need, obviously, a forward because they're thin up front. There's not anybody, David Gustafson hasn't played. He's played 2 periods since early December, Dave. You've been chronicling that, and he's going to be back with the Moose and will probably play for the Moose, tomorrow and Monday for sure, I would assume. So he's, going to get some games under his belt. But in terms of, Adam Brooks, is this just a guy the Jets are going to throw a dart on to see, what they can get out of him?
I mean, I don't want to say it seems that way, but I mean, the reality is it's almost no cost, right? I mean, he's a Winnipegger, and regardless, that shouldn't matter. But the truth is he seems to be able to handle himself, and you need it. I mean, I'm a little surprised the Jets haven't given Jeff Malott a shot. I mean, he's a guy who's, he scores a lot of goals from the inner slot for the Manitoba Moose. The only reason that I'd say he might not be getting a recall, his first ever NHL recall after signing an NHL deal with the Jets last summer, I think is because he was dealing with an injury and he missed the 4 games on the road. So unfortunate timing for him. That's happened a couple times. Johnny Kovacevic, who probably would have had a recall up to the Jets earlier in the season, he obviously ended up getting it. But he, when he was in COVID protocol, he missed his kind of what would have been his initial first ever recall up to the Jets. I thought maybe Jeff Malott could have been an option for him. Big boy, I think about 6'2", 6'3", and likes to get to that dirty area. So, I like the move because there's no cost to it, right? I mean, you need to have players. David Gustafson, as you just said, Drew, he's played 4 minutes and 56 seconds in 2 periods of hockey since December 17th. So, I mean, not a lot, and you're not going to throw him into the NHL and expect him to. I mean, even if you're not going to play your fourth line, which we've talked about, you need to do more. Mm-hmm. The reality for the Jets is that you have to have bodies, and you don't have those healthy bodies because, like I said, I don't even know if Jeff Malott is playing tomorrow. I mean, we'll find out. But, it comes down to, I mean, you have a guy like Mikey Esimont who you could also always call up. But I don't think it hurts to have the depth. And I think that's one of the things the Jets need. And like I said, this is an opportunity because we don't know how long Andrew Kopp is going to be out for. We don't know how long Cole Perfetti is going to be out for. And we know it sounds like Nikolai Ehlers is not going to be, back anytime soon still. Right. He's skating every other day. So the reality is you needed to do something, and you don't have a ton of options on the Moose, right? Like I said, Gustafson needs to play with the Moose. Malott needs to be playing with the Moose simply because he didn't play those last 4 games. He hasn't played in a little while. And then you've got Esimont, who's the only other guy who maybe you could get a recall. But I mean, it's limiting. And if you have one more injury, it could really, put you in a bind. So I think it's just, added insurance for a Jets team at very little cost.
And I'm sorry, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, I always, I mean, maybe some people care about this more than others. Maybe, it's because I'm a proud Manitoban. I work for Hockey Manitoba. I don't know what it is, but, Adam Brooks, former, Winnipeg Thrashers, U18 AAA, former, Winnipeg Hawks. I mean, you don't get any more local than that, right? So I always love when the Jets acquire Manitobans, and we've kind of talked about that over the years. You haven't had a lot of Manitobans playing, for the Jets, as of late. We've seen a few, but so I always like that. I mean, again, I put maybe more stock in it than I just always think, and it's not just a Winnipeg thing. I always like it, when a Toronto kid plays for the Leafs or whether a Calgary area kid plays for the Flames. You guys know where I'm going with that. So yeah, I agree with what Dave said there. I mean, I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that you want to keep guys like Malott and Gustafson with the Moose because of the injury situation. And you want a guy that's got a lot of pro experience. And Brooks, we talked about it. Like I think he played 4 years with the Toronto Marlies. He's been one of those guys that just hasn't been able to get a lot of time in the NHL. So he just gives you another option. If, for example, Dave Lowry isn't liking what he's seen out of Evgeny Svechnikov. And I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not setting up, Svechnikov to fail here. I'm just saying that, he's an option for Lowry because Svechnikov obviously was a healthy scratch. He's obviously going to get into the game today. So, I mean, he's a guy that has scored, prolifically, even going back to the WHL days with Regina. 130 points, Dave, I think, was his last year with Regina. So obviously he's not going to score 50 goals for the Jets guys, but he is a guy that if he's put into the lineup, he's got really good hands, good shots. So, it's only a positive thing. It's always positive, I think, at least when, you can bring in a guy that has had a nice pro career and he's from Winnipeg.
Let me ask you guys this. I mean, as of late, the Oilers, or the opponent tonight, have been going 11-7. Marcus Niemelainen has been, or Niemelainen, to be accurate, I think, has been their seventh defenseman they've been going with. Yeah, no kidding. He's been, they've been going 11-7 as of late since the coaching change, since Jay Woodcroft took over in Edmonton. Do you think the Jets should consider maybe going 11-7, given that Ville Heinola, had played, pretty well in his time when he was on the back end when Logan Stanley was injured? Do you think that's something that Dave Lowry and the Jets should consider? It doesn't sound like it's going to happen today, but given, if the absences of Kopp and Perfetti and Ehlers are extended, and if Heinola isn't playing at the Moose, should the Jets consider going 11-7 with their forward and defenseman alignment?
Yeah, I'll let Dave get in here too, but yeah, I do think they should be considering it. But the only reason I don't know if we'll see it anytime soon, Drew, is because we've finally started to see the fourth line play more and produce, right? Like Dominic Toninato obviously was the big one on the penalty kill, right? So, I mean, we don't know exactly what the lines are going to be, but I think we'd expect, Reichel possibly to be in the top 6, right, Dave? And, we'll get Dave in here, but I mean, it's going to be a little bit of musical chairs, without Perfetti and Kopp in the lineup. And so, like, is your fourth line going to be Toninato and Harkins and Pagansky? like I think there's a good chance that would be the fourth line, right? So I think those guys have played well. So that's maybe why I wouldn't expect, you mentioned, Drew, I don't think anybody's expecting 7-11 today, but I'm talking about like Monday versus Calgary or Wednesday versus Dallas. Maybe we would see it against a team, like Calgary, but with Heinola and Stanley now up with the Jets and the way Heinola was playing, that's the unfortunate part, Dave, is that Heinola was starting to play his best hockey, and Logan Stanley's been good. Don't get me wrong. But, it's always, you don't like to see a player come out of the lineup when they're playing really well.
Yeah, and I guess it also goes to the idea that if he isn't going to be playing for the Winnipeg Jets, then you should send him to the Manitoba Moose, because there's no value in a young player who's waiver exempt to not be playing hockey games. Moose have 9 straight in Winnipeg starting tomorrow. And so I just think it's a function of, you got to play. If you're not playing them, and you're going to have to make decisions anyways, right? We know Nathan Beaulieu is still he was in a yellow non-contact uniform. We don't know if he'll still be in that, but the reality is there's no taxi squad opportunity, and you have to be, cognizant of your numbers, right? And if your numbers put you above the roster requirements, then you have to make decisions accordingly. And one of the easy ones would be, if you're going to not play him, which, like I said, we don't ultimately make the lineup decisions. The Jets coaching staff do. So, if they're keeping Logan Stanley in over Ville Heinola, well, then send Heinola to the farm and let him play. And then look at that, your defense, right? You've got Heinola, Kovacevic, Chisholm, and Gvanke, and Simon Lundmark. So you got 5 Jets draft picks all playing big minutes for the Manitoba, or I should say big minutes, because they'll all be playing a lot, but maybe not significant, not like 25 minutes a game, but they'll all be getting opportunities with the Manitoba Moose, and that's what you need. And look, I agree, Ezzy. I think Ville Heinola has been playing much better of late. I think his, like I said, that first game, he just seemed, playing a little bit scared. And then once he got more comfortable and once he got more into the moment and less, there's a little less thinking, just trust in his hockey ability, I think you start to see what it is that made him a first round pick in 2019. So the Jets do have lineup decisions to make, but ultimately, and again, we don't know what's going to happen with Kopp and Perfetti. That might give them a little bit of latitude if guys are coming off of IR or going to go on IR if they've got someone coming off. So that'll, give them a little bit of latitude. But, ultimately, yeah, Drew, you're right. If you're going to keep him, then play him. Yeah. And if you're not going to play your fourth line, then definitely, why wouldn't you go 11-7? I know it sometimes throws things off, but the truth is you don't have to give him a ton of minutes, or you can, decide if you see that Heinola is going and Stanley isn't, it gives you that added flexibility. And Stanley and Heinola and Schmidt look like kind of a dynamic pairing together, right? So there is quite a lot to like, I think, from those two. So yeah, it's interesting. It's a curious decision, but I guess, from we have to go based on what the coaching staff is going to do, not what we would do, because, we don't coach the team.
And I wanted to throw out one more thing.
Everyone's thankful for that.
Yeah. And earlier, Dave, I was kind of, guessing what the fourth line would be. And you mentioned this earlier, Dave, like, could we see Evgeny Svechnikov go back into the lineup and play with Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois? That was my assumption, right? Like, Pagansky would stay on the fourth line. Reichel would stay on the third line with Christian Vesalainen and Adam Lowry. Obviously, we haven't talked a lot about Christian Vesalainen, but he's started to have more of an impact on the game. So, could we see Christian Reichel?
I thought he played well on Thursday against the Kraken. I thought he played well. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Drew. And he has been a little bit of a forgotten man here with, guys like Christian Reichel and Austin Pagansky, being noticeable, and playing in the lineup with, guys like Nikolai Ehlers and Andrew Kopp out. So it's going to be really interesting to see, what Dave Lowry does here, because I think, who you decide to put in that top 6 is going to have an impact on the third and fourth lines, right? Like, I think what you want to avoid is you don't want to have your fourth line playing 5 or 6 minutes. You'd ideally like them playing, somewhere around 8 to 10 minutes, depending on, special teams factor in, because obviously, Dominic Toninato will play on the penalty kill. But, we could see Reichel up with Connor and Dubois, and I would have no problem with that. Just right now, we're not clear, but it is nice to see Svechnikov back in the lineup. And if they do reunite him with Dubois and Connor, obviously we're not going to have any problem with that, because he's had success earlier in the season.
Well, let me ask you guys this. I posed this question to Murat in terms of the matchups. The Jets obviously have last change in today's game, being the home team. And, with Andrew Kopp out of the lineup this afternoon, or more than likely out of the lineup this afternoon, do you think that changes Dave Lowry's philosophy as to how he matches up against McDavid and or Draisaitl? My thinking being that if it was Kopp and Lowry and Christian Reichel, for example, he would have a lot more confidence in putting that line out there against Draisaitl or against McDavid. With it being likely Vesalainen, Lowry, and Reichel, does Dave Lowry have that same degree of confidence with that matchup, or does, which goes back to my question to Murat, maybe look at using Dubois in more of a, not a shutdown role, but more of a best against best kind of matchup situation, with the changes in the Jets lineup and with the uncertainty, particularly as it pertains to Vesalainen and Reichel and Lowry and the effectiveness of that line.
Yeah, and it's because we don't know what the line is going to be, as you said, Drew, right? So, yeah, I mean, if you have Lowry and Kopp together, obviously, I mean, that's been the Jets' bread and butter for so many years. But, what makes the Oilers so tough to defend against is, they've had McDavid and Draisaitl up the middle, but in games, what they'll do is they'll reunite those guys depending on what's happening in the game. Right. So even if McDavid and Draisaitl start off on different lines, we've seen that going back to last year's playoffs. Right. So that's what makes it so hard. It's just, you pick your poison. Right. Like, I think, I would like to see, let's say if if Draisaitl is centering that second line, and I think his line mates have been Kane and McLeod, and then you've had Yamamoto, and then you've had Zach Hyman up on the top line for most of the year. But Puljujarvi is a guy that obviously would normally be on that line with McDavid and Hyman. Hyman's having a really good year, by the way. So I would expect, Dubois to go up against the Draisaitl line, and then maybe you go Scheifele's line against the McDavid line. Like, it's hard to predict, but obviously, we're going to wait and see what happens. But I mean, depending if it's the Scheifele line or the Dubois line, I mean, it's going to be a tall order. We talked about it. I mean, if you're able to keep these guys to a point each, I think you've done a really good job. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised as well if you try to get the Lowry line, because let's say that the line is Lowry, Pagansky, and Vesalainen, or it could be Lowry, Reichel, and Vesalainen. I still think Dave Lowry is going to have some degree of confidence, but there's no doubt that it's going to be a different look for the Oilers, to face the Jets, because right now there's just, I mean, 3 significant players are out of the lineup, and say whatever you want about the Jets' current circumstances. Perfetti is now a staple of that top 6, so they're going to miss him. But we got Derek on, so I will stop talking.
We're pleased to welcome to the program from Post Media in Edmonton to give us the perspective of the Edmonton Oilers. Derek Van Diest joins us on the show. Derek, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. How are things?
Morning, guys. Hope things are well. Things are well here. Nice and quiet so far. I think we expect to get a little louder downtown in the downtown core a little later, but you're nice and quiet so far here right now.
There you go. That's good.
It's those Volkswagen Beetles, right, Derek? There's a cavalcade of Volkswagen Beetles.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, they're coming through a little. They weren't so bad last week. They weren't so bad. They stopped at around 3:00 in the afternoon. So, but they're expecting another I guess, parade this afternoon.
That's a nice way to put it, Derek. Obviously, we brought you on to talk about the Oilers and the Jets, a key Western Conference tilt this afternoon in downtown Winnipeg, where hopefully things, like you said, will be a little bit more peaceful. This Oilers team has obviously been playing some very good hockey since Jay Woodcroft took over and Dave Tippett was dismissed as head coach. Is it the proverbial, dead coach bounce? Or is there some actual tangible results here that lead you to believe that this is the real Edmonton Oilers that you're watching as of late?
Well, I think the jury is still out on that, whether it is the dead coach bounce or not, because when you look at what the Oilers are doing right now, they're getting production from their bottom half of the lineup, which they didn't get when Dave Tippett was here. If McDavid and Draisaitl weren't scoring, then the Oilers weren't winning. And the Oilers have won the last 4 games, getting a pretty good secondary scoring, and they're getting some good goaltending. So those are the things that they didn't have here when they kind of went into that slide with Dave Tippett. Mike Smith was injured. He was coming off an injury, and now he's playing extremely well. He looks like he's in a pretty good groove right now. And then you always get that energy from your 3rd or 4th line guys, because when a new coach comes in, you're ready to impress the new coach. You want to say to the new coach, listen, I can play more than 7 minutes a night, 8 minutes a night. I can contribute on whether it's the penalty kill or other situations. I can get a regular shift. And I think there was a situation where Dave Tippett had his 3rd and 4th line guys slotted, and they weren't going to go anywhere. They were in that lane. They weren't going to get out of that lane. And that's just the way it is sometimes. your coach thinks he has you figured out, and you're stuck there no matter what you do. Even if you have a good game, you're not going to get up in the lineup. So Jay Woodcroft comes in here, and a lot of the guys that are here play for Jay Woodcroft in Bakersfield, and they say, hey, I can impress Jay Woodcroft now. Now I have a new opportunity to kind of maybe get more than 8 minutes a night, maybe, work my way up the lineup a little bit. And you're seeing that from some of those guys like Warren Fogle, guys like Derek Shaw, those third and fourth line guys, Derek Ryan, those third and fourth line guys that are now getting a bit more minutes. You're getting an opportunity, and Jay Woodcroft say, okay, you wanted your chance. Here's your chance. Let's see what you can do. And right now it's paying off. So it's going to be interesting to see whether that lasts in the long run, whether it kind of all settles back into where it was before, or whether these guys can continue chipping in and helping produce on a regular basis moving forward.
Derek, we have to ask you about former Winnipeg Jet Evander Kane. Obviously, not a lot of people at the beginning of the season kind of saw that coming, but obviously with what happened in San Jose, he became available, and Edmonton was clearly, the front runner to land him, and they obviously did. 8 points in 9 games, including 4 goals. He had a couple of points against Anaheim a couple of nights ago. I guess it's obvious to ask you how he's fit in, because it seems like he's fit in nicely. But aside from, the points, how does he fit into the overall, makeup of this team? Because he's obviously a controversial figure.
Yeah, so far so good. And I think everyone knows what Evander Kane can do on the ice. It's exploits off the ice that kind of get him in trouble. And it just kind of maybe sometimes the way he carries himself. But I think this was a situation where they brought in Leon Draisaitl, they brought in Connor McDavid, they brought in Darnell Nurse, and they said, hey, what do you guys think of this guy? Should we bring this guy in? And we all know what he can do on the ice, but are you able to kind of, handle the stuff off the ice? And Evander Kane's going to be on his best behavior here. He knows he's down to probably his last strike. Like, if it doesn't work out in Edmonton, he might be done playing hockey, regardless of how talented he is. It's just after a while, all that off-ice stuff, it gets old, and teams don't want anything to do with it. And I think, even this time around, I think there's only a couple teams interested when he was such a talented player. If he just took the player on its own, every team would be interested in a player like that, but you just don't want the baggage associated with it. So I think he realizes, I'm on my last strike here. I got to be on my best behavior, even if it's these 40 games or so, and then maybe another team will take a shot at me down the road next year. So I think that's kind of his mindset going in here. And I think the Oilers, they looked at it and they said, listen, we think we have a strong enough leadership group in here where we can handle a guy like Evander Kane, a personality like Evander Kane. He's got a big personality, let's be honest. He kind of takes over and he has a big personality. So we think we can handle that. As long as he does what he does on the ice, I think we can handle the stuff off the ice. Now, so far, he's been on his best behavior, but it's early here yet. And to be honest with you, Edmonton, I don't know how much trouble you can get yourself into in Edmonton here. But so far it's been so good. And I think he did inject some life into this team, and he's allowed the team to really kind of have a balanced lineup. Now the Oilers are able to balance those top 3 lines, and they're able to roll those top 3 lines, where before they were really relying heavily on their top 2 lines and relying heavily on guys like Draisaitl and McDavid and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. And now they're able to spread out the offense a little bit. And I think as the season goes along and Kane gets kind of in more and more better game shape, I think he'll be a big asset to the hockey club. It's just that hopefully you got to keep all that off-ice distractions away and just focus on hockey right now.
Derek, I'm going to tie mine into both the Kane answer, but also to the goaltending question, because, there was some rumors that the Oilers were interested in Marc-Andre Fleury, but Evander Kane, they didn't exactly make friends with Marc-Andre Fleury the other day. I saw in a game, but is Mike Smith, do you think, putting to bed the idea that the Oilers need to still think about fixing their issues in goal, or is that still something that's going to be on the radar for the brain trust of the Oilers going into the trade deadline?
I think it's still going to be on the radar, because Mike Smith right now, when he's healthy, he's a fantastic goaltender. He can still play goal, but the problem is keeping him healthy, and I think that's been the issue right now. He had an ankle injury that kept him out almost half the year, and then he had another injury that kept him out. So you never know when Mike Smith is healthy. And Ken Holland always said, we have a healthy Mike Smith, we have a healthy Mikko Koskinen, and Smith plays 2/3 of the games, and Mikko comes in and plays every third game. We have good goaltending. We can handle that goaltending. That'll work for us. But that's a tough plan when one goalie goes down, and now you're forcing Mikko Koskinen to be your starting goaltender. Mikko Koskinen's been here for 4 years. People know he's not a starting goaltender. He can't carry the load. He can come in and play really well for you one every 3 games, one every 4 games. He's a very capable backup. So Smith's got to stay healthy. And I think that's right now, that's where you're rolling the dice when you're Ken Holland and the Edmonton Oilers. You're rolling the dice on having a healthy Mike Smith, especially down the stretch when things get a bit more intense, games will get a little tougher. So I think they're still kind of eyeing out there, seeing if there is another goaltender out there. The problem is, though, if you're going to go get a goaltender, you're going to have to get someone to take Mikko Koskinen off your hands. Now, that contract expires this year, but it's tough to get a backup taken off your hands. Who's going to want a guy like Mikko Koskinen right now when they know that he can't carry the ball as a starter? So that's the dilemma that Ken Holland is in, and it's the Oilers are right at the cap, so it's money in, money out, and he's said this a lot of times. So if you're going to make a trade for a guy like Marc-Andre Fleury, you're going to have to send Mikko Koskinen back the other way, and I don't think there's a big market right now for Mikko Koskinen, even though his contract is expiring. But I think the Oilers are still looking, because I know where they run into problems is when Mike Smith gets hurt, and then they have all sorts of problems in goal. So I think right now they're not as desperate as maybe they were 3-4 weeks ago, but I think that they're still eyeing out there to see if there's someone out there that they can bring him in and, help them go on a long playoff push.
Along those lines, Derek, anytime I've watched him, and albeit it's been in limited viewings, Stuart Skinner has looked solid to me. Is there a reason why he hasn't really been given, that what I'll call a fulsome opportunity? Is it just a matter of he's blocked because of the presence of both Koskinen and Smith in the lineup?
Yeah, it's a little bit of that, and it's a little bit of seasoning as well. I think if you know Ken Holland, he likes his goaltenders to develop, to really kind of get a lot of playing time in the American Hockey League. And last year, Stuart Skinner was here, and he didn't do a very good job. So they thought, let's give him a full year in the AHL, let him develop, let him become the starting goaltender, let him take on a heavy workload, and then bring him up next year. That was the plan, because Koskinen will be gone next year. So I think that was the plan for next year. Stuart Skinner's come up, and he's played well in the games that he has been needed. So I think the Oilers, in a sense, are happy the fact that they do have a guy in the minors that they can call up and he can fill in. So I think they're happy with that, but they don't want Stuart Skinner sitting on the bench behind Mike Smith here. They want Stuart Skinner playing hockey, as many hockey games as he can. And that's always been Ken Holland's philosophy. And you look at the goaltenders that he's had in Detroit, you look at the time those guys had to develop, play their way through the system before they became starting goaltenders with the Red Wings. So I think that's kind of what he's looking at for Stuart Skinner. He wants him to be the number one guy down there. He wants him to be one of the best goaltenders in the American Hockey League, and then bring him up here. And I think that was always the plan. Obviously, Stuart Skinner's come up here and he's been needed, and he's played well when he's been needed. But I think the jury's still out on whether or not he can be an everyday starting goaltender in the NHL level. He's an everyday starting goaltender at the AHL level, but they want him to get shots. They want him to get reps. They want him to keep busy. They don't want him sitting behind a guy like Mike Smith, especially if Mike Smith can stay healthy and go in a bit of a role here.
The bottom of hour number 2, you're watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel. We're live on all of our social media platforms with Derek Van Diest. He's covers the Edmonton Oilers for Post Media, the Jets and the Oilers, 3 o'clock puck drop in downtown Winnipeg. IC post game show, 5:45 p.m. or thereabouts, back here on our YouTube channel. Now, Derek, we know here in Winnipeg the Jets are without some key members of their roster for today's game. Perfetti, Ehlers, Andrew Kopp likely. In Edmonton, they're without Jesse Puljujarvi now for the next month after he left the game on Thursday against the Anaheim Ducks with an injury. We know that Puljujarvi, obviously was drafted very high, 4th overall back in 2016. He left, he came back. He's been better since he came back. What does the absence of Puljujarvi mean to the Oilers lineup?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a big loss, because Puljujarvi is kind of a streaky scorer, but he is a talented player. He's a guy that you can play with McDavid, you can play with Draisaitl, and he's going to get his points. And he is a very, very talented player. So that's going to be a miss. It's not going to be a huge miss, because he's kind of hot and cold. So he scored the other night, but he's a streaky scorer. So I think that's going to open the door for a guy like Brendan Perlini. He's going to open the door for a guy like Tyler Benson. It's going to open the door for someone else to come up from the American Hockey League to maybe get some of those minutes as well. So the Oilers are going to get a look at some other players that maybe they haven't had a chance to see in those situations. But they're going to miss his goal scoring. But now you're looking at guys like Warren Fogle are picking up the slack. Derek Ryan is picking up the slack. So it's not as big a loss as it may have been a month ago, where nobody was scoring outside of McDavid and Draisaitl. So, but this does open the door for another forward to come in here and get an opportunity maybe in a top 6 role, where otherwise he wouldn't. So we're going to get a look at that. And I think Jay Woodcroft is kind of excited to see if if he can put a guy like Tyler Benson in the top 6 or Perlini in the top 6 or bring someone up for the minors and get him to play with a McDavid or Draisaitl, what they can do with that opportunity. So basically, as Jay Woodcroft said, next man up, give him an opportunity and see if they can carry that load. But Puljujarvi is a loss. He's played well. When he's on his game, he's a really, really tough guy to stop. Big body, good skater, can finish, goes to the net. So that's a loss for the Oilers. He's kind of a reclamation project because he left, went to Finland, came back, a different player, a more mature player. So the Oilers like the player right now, whereas maybe a couple of years ago they weren't too sure about him. So it's going to be a loss, but I think up front they have enough to cover. I think on the back end is where the Oilers are worried a little bit. They still don't have Duncan Keith. They still don't have Chris Russell, and they're playing with a bunch of kids back there, Broberg and even Leinen and some other guys. And so they're going with 11 forwards, 7 defensemen. It'll be interesting to see if they go with that tonight as well, just to kind of break up the minutes on the back end with Duncan Keith not in the lineup.
Derek, I thought for sure you were going to mention Evan Bouchard there. That's who I wanted to ask you about. And obviously, I mean, this is a guy that, spent a little bit of time in the AHL. And then obviously I believe he went over to, was it Sweden or Finland last year, but this is his first full-time NHL season. He's got 9 goals. First round pick. This is a guy who obviously factors in big time to the future of the Oilers defense. Like, how would you assess Bouchard's season thus far? Obviously the Jets forwards are going to see quite a bit of him this afternoon.
Yeah, it's hard to, sometimes it's easy to forget that he's such a young player still, that he's a guy that's still developing because he's playing some heavy minutes. He's playing a lot, and they've asked a lot from him this season, especially considering he was kind of on a taxi squad last year. He didn't play a lot. Yeah, he started the year in Sweden, but he didn't play a lot. He was kind of in and out of the lineup. And then this year he's become a regular. He's a guy that's in the lineup every day. He's playing heavy minutes. And yeah, he's a player that the Oilers kind of looked at and said, eventually he's going to be our number 1 right shot defenseman. That's what we want. That's where we have him pegged. And he's playing in the top 4, and he's playing on the power plays. He's killing some penalties. So his progress from last year to this year has been enormous. It's been fantastic. And they're looking at the fact that, okay, from this year to next year is going to be even better. So I think he's learning on the fly. And he's a young guy. He's still making some mistakes, which is normal for a young guy. They always say defensemen take something like 200 games to kind of really develop and settle into the National Hockey League. So he's still got some games to go. But I think the Oilers are excited about a young defenseman that they drafted for the first time probably since Darnell Nurse, since he's come in here, and they're excited about him. They think he can do big things, and he's getting a huge opportunity. And now he's become, instead of a guy that the Oilers would slowly develop this year, they thought he would play behind Tyson Barrie, kind of slowly develop. I think right now they're counting on him just as much as they are Barrie, maybe even more in some situations when they have those two in the lineup. So I think there's a lot of upside to his game. He's a young player, a lot of upside. But you're going to have to live with the mistakes if you're going to play a young player 20, 25 minutes a night. He's going to make some mistakes. He's going to get caught in his own zone. He's going to make mistakes on the power play. But you got to live with those and then hope he learns from them. And I think there's a lot of excitement about Evan Bouchard and what he can bring to this Oilers lineup.
Well, speaking of excitement, Derek, what is the is there an angst level right now in Edmonton? What is the fan base? I mean, obviously you're in touch with fans. You hear from them on Twitter and various social media, or through responses to your columns. What's it like? Because I mean, they're you have McDavid, you have Draisaitl, you've got a window to win, and there's that window's been seems to be closing. We had same things here in Winnipeg, but what's it like in Edmonton on the ground? What are folks saying, and what's their patience level for this Oilers team?
Well, they've been patient. It's been 12 years or 13 years or whatever. This team has really struggled, and you're right, the window is closing. Because now all of a sudden people are talking about, wow, McDavid's contract is up in 4 years. And Draisaitl's contract's up in 3 years. And that's your window right there. That's your window to win 4 years. Because if McDavid hasn't won or doesn't believe this team is going to be a Stanley Cup contender in that time, yeah, he's going to open to the highest bidder. So I think there's a bit of angst in that regard, because 8 years has turned into 4 years pretty quickly here in Edmonton. When they first got McDavid, they said, oh, great, we have lots of time to develop a winner. We have lots of time to put people around him. And that was 7 years ago. So all of a sudden you're like, wow, okay, now McDavid he's in his 7th season, and the Oilers have won 1 playoff series in 7 seasons. So I think there is a little bit of angst because they know if the Oilers aren't contenders in the McDavid Draisaitl era, they may never be contenders. Like if you can't put a winner with those two players on the ice, then you're in big trouble. And I think there's still so much going on behind the scenes here at Edmonton. It's obviously with Ken Holland here, they thought they had some stability. Ken Holland didn't want to fire his coach, and so now he fired a coach for the first time in his career mid-season. So there's a little bit of instability there. Woodcroft's come in and done well, but is Woodcroft the coach of the future? You don't know. And so there's a lot of angst here at Edmonton because we've seen this story before. We've had Hall and Eberle and all those guys come in here and they said, okay, this is going to be the next generation. And that generation didn't work. And before that, we had a generation with Sam Gagner and Andrew Cogliano, and that generation didn't work. So we've seen these good young talented players come in here and not work out, and now you have probably the best young talented players that have ever come through here, dating back to the Gretzky years, and now there's some angst that, oh my God, this better work out. So if the Oilers have to make the playoffs this year, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If they don't make the playoffs this year, there's going to be huge changes starting right from the top, right from the president down to GM, to everybody. There's going to be another house clearing, I think, here because they can't not make the playoffs. But now they're in a situation where it's a matter of not just making the playoffs, it's a matter of winning a round, winning 2 rounds. You got to start making some ground here in the playoffs. You can't be going out in the first round, which is the case that's happened the last 2 years. So there is some angst here. There is some anxiety about that because right now the clock is ticking, and I think Oilers fans realize that.
Derek, last question for you. We've talked about Jay Woodcroft as the new head coach, and he's come in and the Oilers have been playing well under him. Is he doing anything tactically different from Dave Tippett, or is it almost a simple matter of a new voice and that opportunity to press the reset button has really gone a long way? I know they're running 11-7 as of late, like you mentioned earlier, but is there anything like tangibly on the ice that looks significantly different? Because we all know how difficult it is to sort of throw the baby out with the bathwater when you make a head coaching change mid-season.
What he's trying to do, he's trying to spread out the ice time a little bit more, and then it's not McDavid, Draisaitl. They're not top heavy with the top 2 lines anymore. And he's what he's done is he's given McDavid, Draisaitl, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins their own lines, and he's found some kind of good line mates for them. So he's able to kind of roll those top 3 lines. The Oilers are essentially playing with 3 lines because they're dressing 11 forwards, basically playing 10. I think Devin Shore played 3 minutes the other night. So they're playing with basically 10 forwards. So they're just rolling the 3 lines and they're playing with the 7 defensemen at the back to kind of protect some of those kids. But I think that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to spread the wealth a little bit more, and he's not relying so much on McDavid and Draisaitl. And it's funny because when you have that card, it's easy to play right away. And I think Jay Woodcroft, for the most part, is holding off playing that card because Dave Tippett, when things would go wrong, he'd go McDavid, Draisaitl right away and get those guys going right away. And then suddenly you're top heavy. Suddenly you're just a 1-line team. And I think what Jay Woodcroft and his staff are doing are trying to keep it a 3-line team for as long as possible. And we haven't seen them get in trouble in the third period because I'm sure once they get down in the third period, we will see that Draisaitl McDavid combination, which he has the ability to. But I think he's trying to just to spread out and kind of get more of a rhythm in his top 3 lines right now. And that goes with the power play as well. He doesn't want McDavid and Draisaitl out there a minute 45 on the power play. He'd like them out a minute 20, and give that second unit some time. And the second unit actually got a goal for them the other day. It's funny. It was a running joke here in Edmonton. The second unit had to make most of their 15 seconds on the power play because they weren't going to get out there more than that. So I think those are the 2 biggest things. And then, of course, he's getting the goaltending from Mike Smith. And when you get goaltending, that solves a lot of problems for you. So right now, I think just the way it worked out, Mike Smith has come in. He's played solid. It's going to be interesting to see when Mikko Koskinen, when he gets into the lineup, he's just coming back from COVID protocol, how he kind of reacts now. But everyone right now is in their roles and is in their proper slots. I think it's when you get in trouble is when you're forced to play guys up higher in the lineup than they're used to. And right now, Jay Woodcroft doesn't have to worry about that for the moment.
Off topic, Derek, but you're the national soccer columnist for Post Media as well.
Absolutely.
Just how excited is this Canadian men's national team run? On the verge of qualifying for the World Cup in Qatar.
Oh, it's awesome! It's fantastic, and I thought this team had enough to finish top 3. I did not think they would win the group. I did not think they would beat Mexico here at home. I did not think they'd beat the United States. I did not think they would go to the Azteca and pull out a 1-1 draw and kind of be disappointed by pulling out a 1-1 draw. They beat they tied the United States, and I followed this team for a long, long time. And to winning in Honduras, winning in those Central American places was almost unheard of. So going down there and getting those big wins down there is huge for this program. And I think it's a golden generation of talent that we have right now. And I think you got to give a lot of credit to the MLS and their academies and the CPL and what they're doing, giving players an opportunity to play. And it's just about developing these young players. And I think right now there's the golden generation, and they found the right guy in John Herdman to lead this generation. He's really done a fantastic job. When he took over, I wasn't sure because I didn't think he'd have the same success with the men as he did with the women, just on the fact that he wouldn't have the best players available to him like he did with the women's team. The women's team have some of the best players in the world on that side. I didn't think he'd have that same opportunity, but he's just done a fantastic job, and everyone to a man, the players all just marvel at the job that John Herdman has done, and it's exciting. And they're basically their magic number is 1. They have 3 games to go. They just need 1 point, or they need Costa Rica to drop 1 point, and they're through. So it's exciting times for soccer, and Qatar is going to be an exciting time for Canada to see a Canadian men's team at a World Cup for the first time since 1986. So.
The parade goers that'll be behind you later on this afternoon can repurpose their flags into something more useful, wrap themselves in it for soccer purposes as opposed to the other purposes, but we don't need to get into that. Derek Van Diest is with Post Media. He covers the Oilers. He's the national soccer columnist as well. Derek, thanks so much for joining us. We look forward to your recap of this afternoon's contest.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Take care. There he goes, Derek Van Diest from Post Media with the insights into the Oilers. Let's take our final break. When we come back, more on this afternoon against the Oilers, more on Monday against the Flames, much more to come. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live Saturday morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, that was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, it's Aaron from Bernstein's Deli.
That's right, Ezzy. I'm the guy who makes all your sandwich dreams come true.
So when you think Illegal Curve, what comes to you?
How about juicy chicken schnitzel, grilled salami, fried onions, melted cheddar cheese, and honey mustard on toasted thick-cut city rye bread?
Man, that's like the holy grail of sandwiches.
And so it shall be known as the Illegal Curve Sandwich.
The Illegal Curve Sandwich. Try it today at Bernstein's Deli. Find us at Corridon and Lanark or online at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Ten minutes before the top of the hour. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Big thank you to Murat Ates for joining us in hour number 1. Big thank you to Derek Van Diest for joining us in hour number 2. Some great insight into the Oilers and the Jets, respectively. In case you
and Canada's men's national soccer team.
And the world of painting and paint swatches and paint colors from Murat's perspective as well. So we're covering all gamuts of the spectrum here this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. In case you missed any of the program, there's an immediate replay on our YouTube channel. You can also subscribe to the show on podcast and get it sent to your device automatically each and every week as soon as Dave M does his yeoman's effort in getting the show up and posted. If you haven't already done so this morning, please do us a favor and smash the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and as we ask you all the time, tell a friend, tell a family member that the best place to be is the Illegal Curve Hockey YouTube channel on Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. and then again after every Winnipeg Jets game with the IC post.
It really is the best place to be. Like, you don't need to go to Mexico. You don't need to go to Hawaii. The Illegal Curve YouTube channel is better than both of those places.
You got Dave M's Fire there.
We got I was gonna say we got a heat right there. So it's all good.
We'll warm
no need to go to Palm Springs. No need to go to San Diego. The YouTube channel is the place to be. No question about that.
I don't know. San Diego's pretty awesome. Went there for my honeymoon. If I could choose one place to live in the U.S., it might be there.
Okay, well, I mean, you're welcome to move there. I'm sure that you could.
I'm not going anywhere. What are you kidding? I'm Winnipeg for life, man.
Well, you could become like a surfer dude or something. I think you could become like a surf instructor. Just see him drown on the first time he gets anywhere near the ocean. Just sinks like a stone. It's like, I'm sure that would work out well.
I'd love to try surfing at 39 years old, almost 40, but I've seen it's hard. I think it's hard. People think it's some people at least think it's easy, but I don't think I would do too well. I
think you got that low center.
A shark would eat me, Drew.
Well, I mean, the shark would get full after a little while, but you have that low center of gravity.
I'd start eating the shark as it was trying to eat me.
Yeah, that's right. You're each taking bites out of each other, but that low center of gravity that you got, Ezzy, might be able to work to your advantage. Not that I know a damn thing about surfing at all, but theoretically, it makes sense, I suppose.
I thought you've read Kelly Slater's book, Drew.
Who's Kelly Slater? I don't even know who Kelly Slater
famous
is.
Surfer.
Oh, okay. That's between your Seth Rollins reference and your Kelly Slater references, Ezzy. I have no clue what the hell you're talking about half the time, and maybe
that makes
3/4 of the time.
I don't know what I'm talking about either.
Yeah, that's true. Also, in any event, it'll be an interesting, a very important game for the Winnipeg Jets later this afternoon, and then again on Monday. They've done well in the first stretch of games in the month of February. Now they have to end February with the same momentum. You need to end February with the same sort of level of success, 4-1-1, 5-2-1, whatever it might be. You need to keep that going throughout the rest of this month, starting this afternoon against the Oilers. And then, next week is a big week as well. You got Calgary on Monday, you got Dallas on Wednesday, you got Colorado on Friday, and then next Sunday, but of course we'll talk about that on next Saturday's show, you have the easiest of the games, because you've lost them already this year, in the Arizona Coyotes. So, the Jets need to keep this momentum going over the next 4 or 5 games before they wrap up the month of March, because, once March 1st hits, then they're back into some more games against the Eastern Conference, because it's been strictly Western Conference this month, guys.
Hopefully once March 1st hits, also that means it's going to be a little bit less cold here in Manitoba. I can't take much more of this, boys. But yeah, you're right. And we talked about you're catching a bit of a break, right? Because Jesse Puljujärvi isn't going to be in the lineup for the Oilers. We talked about he's going to be out for, it looks like, a few weeks, right? And they're inexperienced on the back end. Like, Derek Van Diest talked about that quite a bit. Obviously, Evan Bouchard has tons of talent and he's having a really good season. But this Oilers defense, that's been, their weakness in addition to goaltending, right? And obviously, Stuart Skinner, is a guy that maybe we'd like to see a little bit more of. We're not sure who's going to start in net, tonight, but you have to bring the aggression, and that really is what has stood out to me, dating back to last weekend's game against Nashville, going down a couple of goals, but you saw an explosion. Like, the Jets are not letting deficits, affect them, and you want to see more of that balanced scoring, and you're going to need it with Cole Perfetti out of the lineup. Whether Christian Reichel ends up going up on that top line, whether it's Evgeny Svechnikov, Dave, the Jets are hopefully going to continue the offensive production from guys like Scheifele, Wheeler, Connor, and Dubois. But they're going to need contributions from everybody. The Oilers are on a roll right now. They've got the Jay Woodcroft bump. Hopefully for Jets fans, it doesn't continue this afternoon. But say whatever you want about the Oilers, they can score with the best of them, even though it hasn't been the same level from some of the secondary cast. But they've got a great power play, so you don't want to give them too many opportunities on the power play, even though the Jets have been good on the penalty kill. But you don't have Andrew Kopp, so obviously Dominic Toninato is a guy that has had success scoring the shorthanded goal. But there's no doubt that this is going to be a huge game. You don't want to have a 500 homestand. You want to keep it going. And you're right, Drew. I mean, next week's going to be tough. Calgary, Dallas, and Colorado. I mean, like Arizona, we'll kind of just forget here for a second, but
that's next
not
Saturday.
going to get any easier.
No, it's certainly not going to get any easier, Dave. I mean, the Jets really, we say it, the nature of the beast by how them struggling so much. It's almost each game is as important as the game previous, no matter what the results were. Mm-hmm. But for a team that probably thought they were only going to be 3 back entering today's game, you're now 5 back, as we outlined at the beginning of the show. If I'm not mistaken, the LA Kings play in Arizona tonight, so that usually bodes well for the team that's playing against the Coyotes. So the Jets will need to keep pace with that, with the LA Kings that they're chasing. I mean, the Dallas Stars are off tonight, but the Anaheim Ducks, they're in Vancouver, and the Jets want to remain ahead of Vancouver. So, you don't have there's no room for that sag, even though that you're playing against an Oilers team. And even though you've done some good things over the last 6 games, you need to keep it going game after game after game after game after game for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, the cushion is all gone now from what the Jets had built up early in the season. And we've talked about that. Each game becomes more and more important especially as the games decrease and you have less and less opportunity to make things up. So yeah, I mean, it's a huge game and you can't look ahead to Calgary and Dallas, because the truth is you can only focus on the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, Edmonton, we talked about it, right? They're 3rd in the Pacific, tied with LA, I believe, and they want to maintain their spot. They're not that far back from Calgary, right? Despite the fact that things seem to have gone awry, it's actually pretty tight in the Pacific. So if you're an Edmonton Oilers team who, gotten the benefit of you want to call it a dead coach bounce or whatever, the reality is they're rolling right now.
I feel a little bit bad that we've killed off Dave Tippett at least a number of times on this show.
Whatever it is, but the point is that the truth is that you've got
I'd like to apologize to the Tippett family.
Yeah, that's feeling very good about their hockey right now, and so you need to. I saw one of the comments in the chat, and it's right. You need to come out and have a strong effort to start this game, and you need to be able to put something on the board, something that you can build upon throughout the course. You don't want to have. I mean, look, the team's shown that they can come back. That's not an ideal way to play, but the reality for this Jets team is you need to be able to show that you can play with the best. And you've shown it, but you can't. You use your word, Drew. You can't have sag right now. You can't afford a bad game. I mean, again, it's not going to derail your season completely if you don't get any points tonight. Obviously, it's not ideal, but you have to play the right way. If you play the right way and you don't get points, it's understandable. If you play the wrong way and you don't get points, that's a lot more difficult to discuss. So we'll talk about it on the post-game show. Just so anybody knows, we've got 4 tickets for the Moose game tomorrow afternoon at 2:00. They take on the Milwaukee Admirals. Mikhail Burden bobblehead night.
Didn't we give those away, or did we give?
I gave away the Monday game. I got some more. Got a bump of 4 for tomorrow. So if anybody wants to go, Dave@illegalcurve.com is my email, or I see Dave. Send me a message. Let me know why you want to go. We got a great story of someone who's going on Monday. He's getting a chance to go with his son, who hasn't seen in a long time. So kind of cool there. And then you don't have to have a great story. It just helps and makes it easier to choose who's going to go to the games.
Yeah, Dave wants to hear all of your stories.
Dates. Others wear Legal Curve hats and have Mikhail Burden bobbleheads to give away.
There you go. So we'll be doing that. You can email
Dave. You're a hero, Dave.
Dave@illegalcurve.com @IC.
I'm going to eat a hero sandwich after the show.
Would you stop talking, please? The post-game show later on this afternoon, 5:45 p.m. or thereabouts. Take a couple minutes. Dave and I will drive that bus and talk about what happens with the Jets and the Oilers later this afternoon. We want to say a big thank you to all of our sponsors. They make this show. They make the website. They make the post-game show a possibility. Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Zappia Group Realty, Bernstein's Deli, Tough Duck, Boston Pizza, Seagram's, Rolly's Transfer, and Grid Park support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. Reminder, if you haven't already done so, smash the like button on your way out before you go. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to the podcast. Leave us some feedback. Always like to hear from our audience about what they thought of the program. Tell a friend, tell a family member. The place to be on Saturday mornings is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show on the Illegal Curve YouTube channel. Same with the postgame show later on this afternoon. For Ezra Ginsburg, for Dave Minuk, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show live on our YouTube channel. We'll see you in about 6.5 hours for the postgame show. Thanks for joining us on this Saturday morning.